The moment my front door camera sent a motion alert, I knew something legendary was about to happen. Because no one approaches a yard full of 12-foot Halloween skeletons at 7 a.m. with that much anger unless chaos is loading. Standing at my gate was the HOA's final boss, Karen herself. Fists clenched, jaw tight, staring at my decorations like they personally ruined her life. 3 towering skeletons guarded my lawn. One holding a pumpkin, one riding a fake motorcycle, and one pointing dramatically at the street. Before I could even step outside, she screamed, "This is a disgrace to the neighborhood," loud enough to wake the dead and probably summon them too. I opened the door, coffee still in my hand, and that's when she went nuclear. She waved a printed HOA rulebook like it was a weapon, yelling that my skeletons were terrorizing property values and emotionally disturbing her morning. Walk! Neighbors peeked through blinds, phones already recording. Karen demanded I remove everything immediately or face fines, penalties, and serious consequences. I calmly asked which rule I was breaking. That was a mistake. Her face turned red as she shouted about seasonal decor limits, aesthetic harmony, and common sense. Even though it was October and Halloween decorations were everywhere, she stomped across my lawn without permission, poked one skeleton's ribcage, and declared she was calling enforcement. I reminded her politely that HOA rules allowed holiday decor 30 days before the holiday. She laughed, an evil little snort, and said she'd make sure the board reinterpreted the rules, starting with me. Then, she leaned in close and whispered, "Enjoy them while you can." That's when I realized this wasn't about skeletons. This was about control. What Karen didn't know was that I had already read the HOA handbook cover to cover, including the sections most people ignore. She also didn't know that the same rules she was threatening me with applied very differently to her own house. As she stormed off, promising fines and hearings, my camera caught one last thing. Down the street, hanging proudly on her roof, were full Christmas lights. Not a single bulb was off. In July. By the next afternoon, the HOA email hit my inbox like a threat disguised as stationery. Karen had officially filed a complaint, accusing my Halloween display of violating community standards and creating an unsafe environment. She CC'd half the board and signed it with a smiley face. I replied politely, attaching screenshots of the actual rule, allowing seasonal decorations 30 days prior. Minutes later, she responded in all caps. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. Friday night arrived like a neighborhood premiere. The HOA clubhouse filled with folding chairs, board members, and neighbors pretending they were only there by coincidence. Karen sat front row, arms crossed, wearing a Christmas sweater. In October, she launched into her speech, claiming children were scared, pets were traumatized, and my skeleton riding a motorcycle encouraged delinquency. She even brought printed photos labeled evidence. When it was my turn, I stood calmly and read the rule aloud, word for word. A few board members nodded. Karen interrupted repeatedly, insisting intent mattered more than text. That's when I asked permission to show something else. I pulled up another section of the handbook. Holiday lighting restrictions. Decorations allowed only during the designated season. No exceptions. Maximum dates clearly listed. The room shifted. One board member squinted at the screen and asked, "Does anyone here currently have out-of-season lights displayed?" Silence. I didn't say a name. I didn't have to. Someone coughed. Another neighbor whispered. Karen's smile twitched. The board postponed a decision, claiming they needed time to review consistency. Karen stormed out, muttering about bias and conspiracies. Outside, a neighbor slapped my shoulder and whispered, "You just lit the fuse." He was right, because once HOA rules get applied evenly, they stop being weapons and start becoming mirrors. What Karen still didn't realize was that the enforcement process she triggered couldn't be selective anymore. A complaint had been logged. Inspections were mandatory. Notices had to be issued equally. And her house, glowing like December in the middle of summer, was next on the list. Over the weekend, rumors spread faster than porch flyers. People debated fairness, favoritism, and why rules existed at all. Some thanked me quietly. Others warned me loudly. I stayed silent, letting procedures speak. Cameras stayed on. Emails piled up. Somewhere between anxiety and amusement, I realized the story was bigger than decorations. It was about power meeting paperwork, and paperwork winning slowly. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down, posting passive-aggressive notes and smiling harder. She believed volume could bend ink. She was wrong, and the clock had started. By Monday morning, compliance notices were inevitable. Unstoppable, formal, and unforgiving. They would arrive quietly, stamped officially, and change everything permanently for the neighborhood forever. Monday morning didn't start with yelling. It started with envelopes. Official HOA compliance notices appeared like silent ghosts on doorsteps throughout the neighborhood. Most were minor reminders about trash bins or fence paint, but one envelope stood out. Thick paper, formal language, addressed directly to Karen. I watched from my window as she picked it up, smiled confidently, then froze. Her shoulders stiffened. The smile collapsed. She read it again, and again. By noon, her Christmas lights were the main topic of every group chat. The notice cited the exact rule number, the exact dates, and the exact penalty schedule. Decorations displayed outside the approved season were subject to immediate fines, per day. The letter gave her 72 hours to remove them or face escalating penalties. No appeals mentioned, no wiggle room. Just compliance. Karen did what Karen always does. She knocked on doors. She cornered board members in driveways. She sent emails longer than legal briefs, arguing tradition, community spirit, and personal expression. But rules don't care about volume. And this time she had created the paper trail herself. Every complaint she filed against me forced the HOA to prove neutrality. That meant enforcement everywhere, including her roof. That evening, she marched up to my house. Cameras caught everything. She accused me of targeting her, manipulating the board, and weaponizing the handbook. I calmly reminded her that I hadn't filed a single complaint. She had. She yelled that I should do the right thing and take down my skeletons so this would all go away. I smiled and said I was fully compliant. She wasn't. Behind her, neighbors gathered casually, pretending to check mail or walk dogs. One of them asked loudly, "So when are the Christmas lights coming down?" Karen snapped that it was none of their business. Another neighbor pulled out their phone. The next day, a second notice arrived. The fine clock had started. Karen tried to claim selective enforcement, but the board responded with timestamps, inspection photos, and citations. Everything documented. Everything clean. The same system she trusted to crush me was now closing around her instead. Meanwhile, my Halloween skeletons became local celebrities. Kids posed for photos. Someone added a tiny Santa hat to one skeleton as a joke. I removed it immediately. Compliance matters. But the message stuck. This wasn't rebellion. This was consistency. By Wednesday night, Karen's house still glowed like a December postcard. The fine doubled. Emails stopped. Her porch lights went dark. The neighborhood felt quieter, tense, like the calm before a decision. Because everyone knew the next step wasn't optional. Either the lights came down or the penalties would go nuclear. And Karen hated losing more than she loved Christmas. Thursday arrived with ladders. Not mine, hers. At sunrise, the sound of metal scraping against concrete echoed down the street as Karen dragged a ladder from her garage. Curtains shifted, doors cracked open. Everyone pretended not to watch while watching very carefully. She climbed onto her roof in sunglasses and a hoodie, trying to look unbothered, but frustration leaked from every movement. One by one, the Christmas lights came down, tangled and yanked, bulbs clinking like tiny defeats. Halfway through, she stopped. Her phone buzzed. Another email. Another fine notice. The 72 hours had expired at midnight. Even partial compliance didn't erase accrued penalties. The board had done the math. The total was already more than she'd ever threatened me with. Karen screamed into the phone, pacing the roof like a trapped animal, accusing the HOA of betrayal. The call ended abruptly. She stood there, staring at the street, realizing something irreversible had happened. Later that afternoon, an emergency HOA meeting was announced. Attendance was strongly encouraged. Translation: show up or lose control of the narrative. The clubhouse filled faster than ever. Karen arrived late, no sweater this time, face tight, lips pressed thin. When the board explained the fines, she interrupted, demanding exceptions. The president calmly responded that exceptions required precedent. Karen herself had eliminated that option when she demanded strict enforcement. Then came the vote. Not about me. About fines. The board upheld them unanimously. A neighbor whispered, "She did this to herself." Karen slammed her chair back and accused the entire room of conspiring against her. No one responded. Silence is louder than shouting. Outside, she confronted me again. This time quieter, almost pleading. She asked if I'd be willing to work something out, if she paid her fine. I told her I never wanted anything except to follow the rules. The same rules she tried to use on me. She stared, realizing there was no villain to fight. Just consequences. That night, my skeletons glowed under soft porch lights, completely legal, completely calm. Karen's house was dark, no lights, no decorations, no noise. The group chat exploded with reactions, some celebratory, some cautious. But one message stood out. Maybe the rules should protect everyone, not punish selectively. The next morning, a final notice went out. Karen's fine was locked in, payment due in full, appeals denied, and attached to the email was something unexpected. A proposal to revise HOA enforcement procedures to prevent abuse. Transparency. Equal application. Accountability. Karen had wanted power. What she created instead was reform. And the neighborhood would never work the same way again. The fallout didn't come with shouting or sirens. It came quietly, wrapped in policy updates and awkward smiles. A week after Karen paid the fine, the HOA released a revised enforcement guide. Complaints would now require evidence, neutral inspections, and full board review before action. No single member could trigger penalties alone. Everyone knew why. No one said her name. Karen disappeared for a while. Morning walks stopped, emails ended. Her house stayed dark and undecorated, even as others cautiously began putting up fall lights and porch displays. When Halloween night arrived, my skeletons became a neighborhood landmark. Kids lined up for photos. Parents laughed. Someone brought hot chocolate. The same neighbors who once hid behind blinds now stood openly on the sidewalk, relaxed. The tension that had hovered for years finally broke. Near the end of the night, Karen appeared. No ladder. No rule book. Just a jacket and tired eyes. She stood at the edge of the crowd, watching kids laugh beneath the skeletons she once called a threat. For a moment, I thought she might explode again. Instead, she sighed. She walked over and said quietly, "They're well done." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. I nodded and thanked her. She left without another word. By December, something strange happened. The HOA sent a reminder email encouraging residents to decorate, within guidelines. It included photos from Halloween night. My yard was one of them. Karen's house stayed modest, but tasteful. White lights, on time, off on schedule, no complaints filed. The real change wasn't decorations, it was behavior. Board meetings became shorter, voices calmer, rules clearer. People stopped using them as weapons. When someone tried, others pushed back. The system had learned. On New Year's Day, I packed away the last skeleton. As I closed the garage, I noticed a small envelope taped to my door. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "I still hate skeletons," it read. "But I hate unfairness more. Lesson learned." I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because no one had to fight like that again. Sometimes, the scariest thing in an HOA isn't decorations, it's selective enforcement. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is reading the fine print and letting consequences do the talking. The skeletons went back into storage. The rules stayed on the table. And the neighborhood finally felt like a community instead of a courtroom. If you felt the heat of this story, hit like, because real victories start when we stand together. Subscribe to Karen Story Hub to follow every jaw-dropping moment from my Karen files. And tell me below, how would you handle a Karen trying to control your life?